Okay. So hello, I'm Bob Noseworthy. Some of you may know me from the earlier efforts we've had in my attendance here, but most of the time you've probably been seeing either Dr. Bob Russell from our university or Patrick MacArthur, who presented earlier. I've been overseeing the actual OFA interoperability logo program at the IOL for the past 10 years. And if you're not familiar with the IOL, we can talk offline, but we're an organization that for nearly 30 years has been providing independent testing of networking technologies. So I'll be giving the first part of this talk, and then Paul Grun will be coming up to give an update on the Candy effort. So we'll try to quickly go through just what the logo program is about, what we're looking at coming up with distros and related work. And then get into the compliance and interoperability update from Paul. So hopefully you all have an awareness that the IWG is focusing on the interoperability needs of this organization. It's open to all, as you've heard earlier this week. Anyone in the community, whether you're an OFA member or not, is welcome to participate, hear, and give input into the process. What we're trying to achieve here is really to, as phrased here, deliver on this promise of end user readiness, right? Whether it's the national labs or any other user of this technology, to have some increased confidence that this technology is actually ready and viable. So how do we achieve that? We've been collecting over the years equipment, many parts donated from companies like Intel, AMD, HP, and others to help establish our cluster, and then equipment from hardware providers, be they Mellanox, DDN, or others, to establish what I've called in many cases a Franken cluster of disparate devices, all interconnected and across different switches, which may not represent fully how you might build your particular environment. But again, we're focused on this interoperability of different RDMA technologies, iWarp, Rocky, InfiniBand, and provide that facility in a neutral third-party setting. The logo program has spun up through the IWG to provide that listing and confidence that these devices are truly interoperable. So again, we're principally focusing on this value add to the community through direct testing and validation. So again, a quick graphical look at what the IWG is about. The test plan that guides the logo program is again from member input. We don't try to set the rules. We don't try to make arbitrary marks. We try to work with the community, whether it's for OpenMPI testing and various benchmarks that can be used there, or whether it's for UDAPL or NFS over RDMA. We'll oftentimes interface with folks like Chuck and others to address problems that we encounter through the testing, but how we test is all under the purview of the IWG. So review and input into that process is extremely welcome and encouraged. There are many emerging areas that we're considering, and some are on the screen here, whether it's OS distro testing, NVMe, the Candy effort, and even on-demand testing. We are typically performing 2 biannual interop debug events and 2 logo events. So those 4 activities are what principally occupy the cluster's activity, and then in between we're updating as far as to the latest OFED 4.8 RC1 and whichever OS we happen to use. Currently, our structure is relatively straightforward in that we are looking at a particular environment, Scientific Linux at the moment, a particular OFED distro, like I mentioned, Rocky, iWarp, or InfiniBand, and typically a simple topology. So areas we know we want to improve is to perhaps look at coexistence. It might be very common for you to have multiple RDMA technologies in the same server, and adding that into the program is certainly on our table to ensure that we can look at perhaps InfiniBand and Rocky or dual port connections and such that are certainly common and therefore something we should be including in the logo effort. Similarly, we've been testing Rocky for some time, but we haven't yet had the input for Rocky v2. And so again, this is another call and awareness that in order for the program to expand and improve, we need your input. So in that context, let me just ask really quickly, let me ask it maybe 2 ways here. If you're deploying and using RDMA in any capacity, do you have an environment that makes use of coexistence, meaning you'd have in the same server multiple different types of RDMA technology? I see a couple hands, at least. Is there anyone who thinks that this type of logo testing wouldn't be useful? Okay. How about for Rocky v2? Are we there yet? Does the logo program need to expand and include Rocky v2? Are people using Rocky v2 currently? At least you don't need to say if you're using it, but a show of hands if you're interested in seeing Rocky v2 added to the logo program. Thank you. Okay. So this is just one example. There's very likely other areas of interest that aren't on the screen, so please participate in the IWG and help add to the logo program's test plan so we can improve. On that note, we have had significant interest from SUSE and from Red Hat as two leading examples to do more upstream testing and kernel testing and distro testing rather than our current process of focusing on OFED coming out of EWG and the RCs and GAs there. We'll certainly still do that, but we seek to provide a value to the end users and to those distros that the RDMA capabilities packaged with those distributions are actually functional per the test plan. So basically, we're looking to augment what the distros are currently doing in-house by making our testbed and cluster, that the Franken cluster I referred to, available, and continue to extend that, and even enable interdistro testing. So again, maybe just a quick show of hands in the room, how many would find it useful for us to be able to do interdistro testing in the logo program? Okay, thank you. So we do need to do a few areas of improvements in our testing. Suzanne referenced it earlier. Our current testing has some automation, but it needs to have some improvements. So we'll be looking at adding in those capabilities, faster reporting, a little bit more robustness. And that hopefully leads to what will take shape as I refer to it, at least, as an on-demand program, where we can meet the release schedules of the distros rather than the fixed biannual logo events, and try to expand this program to be more responsive, not just to distros, but maybe even to hardware vendors or other upper layer protocol needs, whether it's Chuck's interest in NFS over RDMA feedback before he finalizes a release, or any other involvement that we can facilitate, including more thorough testing of RCs as they come out of EWG. All things that are certainly on the table of an interest, and we're discussing through the IWG. So to that end, I think many in the room should be aware of this, but let me just put in a plug for our next activity. This is coming up at the beginning of May, currently focused on RC1, unless RC2 manages to squeak out before this event. And again, this is open to the OFILG participants. Let me make sure this is clearly understood, that there is a barrier between the free open participation of the IWG and the funded activity that occurs with the testing. As you can expect, there's some resource needs, and there is some commitment to be made through the OFA that they manage to facilitate the testing effort. But I'd encourage folks who have this interest to get involved, both help shape the test program, help shape the meaning of the logo, and if you're an end user, help define the program and look to the program's logo list as a useful commodity to select your next updates. This event typically, and in this case is, immediately following the IBTA activity that UNH-IOL also hosts at our facility. So the 2 weeks before this, IBTA will be testing their latest and greatest, cables, port tests, whatnot, and then we'll be testing the OFA software. And finally, for my piece here, I want to make the group aware that our facility, much like we work with the IBTA and the OFA, we also work with the NVMe org and have hosted 6 of their various plug fests. Our 7th is coming up at the end of May, and this will be the first time they experimentally look at NVMe over Fabrics, and I would very much welcome participation. We're extending a free participation offer to those hardware vendors who are participating in the OFA logo program to bring in their RCAs, RNICs, and HCAs, and participate in that process to help define what fabric testing with NVMe may look like. So information is available on these slides, and with that, I'll turn over to Paul Gruen.